I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. I wish to invite you to support the program through the Oracles with JamesTyson.com Patreon link. For as little as $3 per month, you qualify for a free monthly psychic reading, a past life regression, and exclusive access to our filmed interviews. Don't lower your guard. That's just the beginning as we give back. When I have reached 2,222 members, we will be giving away monthly trips to supernatural hotspots and conferences across North America. Don't run. I can see you. With a limit of 4,500 Patreon supporters, you will want to get your passports ready, as every third month, we will include paranormal conferences and tours in Europe and Australia. I know you can hear me. Visit theoracleswithjamestyson.com and click on the Patreon link. Where are you listening? That's the Patreon button at theoracleswithjamestyson.com. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, listener, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. Today I have a special guest, a buddy of mine out of Las Vegas, Nevada, the Reverend Shawn Whittington. Pretty cool guy. He runs a thing called Ghost-B-Gone.biz, and it's a paranormal group, but not your basic paranormal group. Shawn Whittington is a devout Catholic, ordained and trained Registered Exorcism, Deliverance Minister. His wife Sharon is a near-death survivor, a certified Stephen minister through her Lutheran faith, and a sensitive and intuitive. So yeah, she sees ghosts, and poor Shawn sees those weird black, creepy things with the red eyes. You know, together they have over 40 years combined experience in these types of investigations. They are fully equipped to perform a thorough paranormal investigation if needed, but Ghost-B-Gone, what they call the ministry, strives to go that one step further than just ghost hunting. They specialize in getting rid of that extra unwanted guest in your home. It's those extra unwanted guests that we're going to speak about tonight. Now, Shawn also has his own paranormal radio show. It is live Monday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on the KCOR Radio Network at kcorradio.com. Tune into his Vegas Supernatural every Monday night. It's got the who's list in the paranormal community, and they join him to discuss all things paranormal on his favorite little online radio show, Vegas Supernatural. If you want to know a little bit more about Shawn, it's kind of cool because on St. Patrick's Day, which was 2 days ago, he had his first book come out. It's kind of exciting. Last night on Vegas Supernatural, he had the book launch, so it was a lot of fun. His new book, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, a supernatural autobiography by Reverend Shawn Patrick Whittington, and it popped out St. Patrick's Day. And guess who the Patrick in Shawn Patrick Whittington was named after? Yes, St. Patrick himself. Shawn, how are you?
I've been good, but two things real quick. I'm going to tell you, whenever I listen to you, and I know it's been a while since I've told you this, I know no one in this field that has a better radio voice than you. And people tell me all the time, Shawn, you got a great face for radio. That's why I'm on the radio. But in addition to that, I don't have that voice, so it's always a struggle for me. And another thing is, I just celebrated 3-year anniversary on the network that I'm on.
Wow, good for you.
But I always, to this day, and it drives my station manager crazy. To this day, I still get I think I'm a little dyslexic, and I still get my verbiage isn't always correct when I call out the station numbers or letters, but I just refer to it as KCOR, and it's KCOR radio.com.
KCOR.
KCOR.
KCOR radio.com. Yeah.
But I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. I'm blessed. And this was a great, great weekend. St. Patrick's Day is huge for me and my family, always has been. The book came out on Sunday. Last night's show on Vegas Supernatural, I had my publisher and two leading paranormal authorities that had read the book on the show to tell me, give me their, tell me like it is, what they thought of it, good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm feeling very blessed right now. And even more so that I'm on the Oracles with James Tyson.
Oh, come on. Well, thanks very much. Does your book have pictures in it?
Oh, yeah. There's a photo gallery at the end.
Perfect, because it's the only way I'm going to open it up.
Absolutely. So. And they're black and white, so you can actually even color them.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Oh, that's great.
So you better get two.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to put this together?
Well, when I finally... Well, it's the story, I didn't want it to be, my version, War and Peace, like huge novel. People, I think, tend to get a little turned away from that when they go to purchase a book and they see how it's a really big book. But it was hard to not, have it be big because it's a lifetime in the making. It's my whole story from before I was born. But it's the abridged version of that because the book is just over a couple of 100 pages long. And I managed somehow to cram in there what I felt were the most life-changing events for me since I was a young kid and throughout my many, many years in the paranormal field and getting on the path to become ordained, and what Sharon and I have gone through the last 16 years together as a paranormal team and all that other good stuff. So it took me actually, once I got the message from Spirit to write this, and I figured out that's what they were trying to tell me, actually 3 years of literally putting my blood, sweat, and tears down through pen to paper to write it. And then Sharon would take it, go into the office, sit down, type it in. She'd read it, edit it, type it into the computer for me because, she majored in English in college, and she's a very intelligent woman. And I know very many things I've already told her about my life before meeting her, and many things in the book included her. And I wanted to make sure I wasn't over embellishing or leaving something out or forgetting, something. So I had her do that for me. So she's as much the author as I am, and I actually feel guilty taking credit as being the author because truly I was guided by Spirit all the way through the process, and without that, I don't think I could have completed it.
Well, it's very interesting because a number of people that I've spoken to are authors in this community. They will talk about almost like they weren't the one writing it. It just flowed, channeled. And certain points in the book were never planned. They were kind of doing it, along the timeline. They write out a timeline, and all of a sudden things were being injected into this timeline that they had no plan on doing. Did you run into anything like that?
Yeah, things that I had forgotten about. I found myself being guided deep within myself to pull scabs off of very old wounds that I had just suppressed and put way back that had no intentions on revisiting or reopening that wound. So it was very therapeutic for me also to write it, and it brought back a lot of good memories, a lot of bad memories, allowed me to write about stuff that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. And in the course of doing that, it gave me, now I'm going to be turning 60 this year, it gave me a whole different outlook at those types of situations that I had pushed down for so long, compared to how I was when I, first experienced them. I looked at it a completely different way, and I've changed so much since the age of 10 and been through so much that it was interesting to go back and look at it with different eyes.
Yeah, I bet it would. I'm fascinated about what you said right at the opening here when you're talking about your book. It starts before you were born.
Well, I had to, I didn't want it to be, and you and I have also had this private discussion before, Lord Frau. I had to research my family background because I know my father came from a long, long line of warriors for Christ. And so I had to go, I wanted to start there, but I didn't want it to be an Ancestry.com journal or anything like that, or bore people with that. But there were some things that I had to include in that. Mm-hmm. Like, it was rumored that his ancestors originally came over from France, settled in northern Scotland. They originally became Clan Douglas, but they were a group of a religious sect very much like the Knights Templar. They weren't Knights Templar, but they were very Knights Templar-ish. And the rumor was they had the Holy Grail with them. Well, since that time, Douglases became Whittinghams. They married in and out of some famous families over there. Stuarts were one of them. But they migrated south. They became Whitens and Whitetown. They started Whitetown, which became Whittington, and they became Whittingtons. But then it was rumored that a priest with the last name of Whittington got out of the country with the Grail and brought it to America, and it's buried or hidden somewhere in Maryland. And then from there, they migrated west. My dad's immediate family were very Quaker-like, and they settled in Oklahoma before it was even a state. It was still called Indian Territory. So they brought a lot of English and Catholicism to the indigenous in that area at the time. And my father was actually born on an Indian reservation in Wyandotte, Oklahoma. But, I go back to his ancestry. They took a big part in the witch hunts in England when that was at its height. So I had to include some of that before even moving on. And all of that led to, of course, my father meeting my mother after the war, and some situations that occurred which resulted in me being here. So yeah, I had to start the story there.
I've never heard the conception of a child being some situations occurred which led to you being here. So that's another way of putting it. What I'm interested in, you were saying that your ancestors weren't of the Knights Templar, but they moved from France to Scotland and may have been in custody of the Grail. You could probably say, okay, we're not with the Knights Templar, but yeah, just hide that, okay? Because we really are. Because that's exactly what the Knights Templar did. They got chased out of France.
And maybe there's some things I'm not telling you.
Yeah, I'm thinking I have to wait for the book or the movie.
Well, there's things that I know that I've been told that I beat myself up. Should I put this in the book? Should I not? There are still some things that I thought best left a mystery.
Yeah.
But
you're talking to somebody who's got ancestry going back to Scotland, and I'm a Canadian, so I know where Oak Island is. And I also have a bit of a history of the Knights Templar doing an archaeological dig in Jerusalem for, 40 or 50 years or something like that. And then going to France, and then the French government saying, you guys are too powerful. I think we're going to have to wipe you guys out. And they took whatever they found in the Holy Lands with them when they fled and went up to Scotland. So, that said, Knight Templar, yeah, that's interesting. It's really interesting. Now I have to get the book. Look at you doing.
I feel so blessed. I got the shipment came in last Thursday, a couple of dozen of them, and it was very emotional and very moving to finally open the box and physically see the books and pick them up and hold them and look at them. I'm going to bless every single one when they leave here. People can get them two ways. It's simpler if you just go to Amazon and purchase it. It's a little less expensive, but sometime later this week, I'm setting that up. People will be able to also purchase it through the Ghost-B-Gone.biz website for a little bit more, but I'm including including the book in a gift package, and the gift package will be a house blessing kit. And upon request, if they want me to autograph the book, I will. Not that I'm famous or anything. It probably will depreciate the value of the book if I do sign it. I've heard. Sign it. Yeah. That is a great idea. Yeah. That's a great idea. I never even thought about that. But so I'm blessed. I'm really, I know that I put some spirits that pushed me to do this at rest too, finally completing it, because the atmosphere at the home really practically overnight changed when I finally knew that it was finished, and I emailed it to the publisher.
I'm going to cut you off right there because I want you to articulate a little bit about that. You say the atmosphere in the home changed. Now, you live in a what I would suggest to people, spiritually cleansed or clean home. Was this atmosphere, in hindsight, would you say that was self-inflicted because of all the energy that was put into this? And once it was in your hand and you could see the fruits of your labor, all that intense energy that you had poured into this kind of, I don't want to say exploded, but just turned into mist and pushed out each side of the house. Is that kind of how it felt?
That is so well said. I never thought about it that way, and it could have very well been that. It really could have been. I stopped getting, a lot of things were happening. I was getting so much visitation from what I assume were ancestors or relatives, and even some close family members that have recently passed on. And I thought that it was all tied in together, but you're absolutely right. Perhaps a lot of that was me just subconsciously it could, very well said, man. I never thought of it that way, and that could have been a lot of it.
Yeah,
but you're right. I do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. When we focus our passion and our energy into a fine point, and I use writing for example. You've got all this information, and you have research, and things are coming and going, and you're focusing, and it comes through your hand into a pen onto a piece of paper. It's focused in a fine point. That energy over time, and the thought of I have to wake up tomorrow, or I have to do this when I get home from work. I've got to do this, or you're taking notes. It's constantly there, but when you let go of it, it clears. And to me, it is like a farmer planting a field. There's so much energy, human energy going into that to actually get that field planted. When the crop is harvested and all that energy used for harvesting that crop, and the crop is in your hand, there's a release. And that release is what I kind of felt, or I sort of feel that you had run into in your home. That energy is released, and all the family members that were there, all the energies that were around you, looking over your shoulder, took a deep breath, took a step back, and have moved on to another family member somewhere else.
You're probably one of the few people that I occasionally get together with, whether you're on my show, and I want to let everybody know you're on my show next Monday night. You're very therapeutic to talk to. You're a very wise old soul, and thank you for that, because I totally did not look at it that way, and now I realize that much of that was probably exactly that.
Oh yeah, you know when you say Sharon's helping you writing the book, you're also being helped spiritually by everyone else who's ever touched the things you're writing about. And when it's complete, that box is opened. They're all standing there looking all as excited as you are, looking at it going, okay, we're done. And we're going to be out eating barbecue in the back porch, you and Sharon,
Yeah.
And writing a book, as you say, can be therapeutic, and just kind of it is like opening the door and letting the water out. Like if your house was flooded, you open the door, let it go, let the book go, let it out.
Yeah, I have. And I know people tell me, it may do great. It may not do so great. You may get people attack you. You're going to have people that love it. You're going to run the whole gamut of every possible scenario and situation you can think of regarding this book. It's done. It's gone. It's out there. It is what it is. And so that's what I'm going to have to come to terms with, and not it's hard for me. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and it was a very personal labor of love. It's going to be hard at first to do that, but I have to find a way to.
Yes. And think about it this way. You've put 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears into that book with you and Sharon. You're happy with the product. You let it go. You put a lot of energy into it. In this plane of our lives we call money, but it's energy, and it's flowing. So you've put your emotional energy into it. You've put financial energy into it, and you let it go. But if one of those books, just one, ends up, somebody bought it, left it on a bus seat in downtown London, England, and someone picks it up and reads it, and from reading one paragraph in that one book changes their life in a positive direction, all of that energy was worth it.
Absolutely. And that's what I hope for. I do, in my heart of hearts, I know that there are messages in that book for many out there. Exactly what those messages are and who those people are that need them, I couldn't tell you, but that's what I feel. And so you're absolutely right. If it does just that, then I've done my job.
Yeah, and you can move on to the second book. No! We're talking to Reverend Shawn Whittington, and I'm driving him completely insane. Not that it was a long drive. You can listen to Shawn again, Vegas Supernatural, Monday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern at...
KCOR.
KCOR? Oh, come on.
KCOR.
KCOR. Las Vegas Supernatural. Roll. And his book came out on St. Patrick's on Sunday, so keep a look for God, Ghosts, the Paranormal Ministry, a Supernatural and Spiritual Autobiography by Rev. Shawn Patrick Whittington. Shawn, moving away from the book for now.
I don't want to.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sharon, moving away
Please,
from the book.
let's move away from the book. It's right. And then they talked me into letting my big fat face be on the cover. I didn't expect that. So now I'm staring at myself everywhere I go in the house now. So.
Oh, Lord. If you turn the book around, is the back of your head on the...
As a matter of fact, I'm doing that right now.
Okay.
There we go.
The back of your head's not on the back part, is it? You can...
Geez, if it was, I would have to complain about that. But no, it's not. Cause I got this very unattractive bald spot starting back there, and the rest of my hair is long, so it's when I do get pictures taken of me from behind, it's a little annoying.
Oh, when I was a Mountie working plain clothes, I had the bearded guy with a ponytail, balding look. Oof, I nailed it. I was the creepiest looking guy. I'd walk into the store or something, and kids would look at me and freeze, and I thought, I really shouldn't walk around in public looking like this. Hey, tell us a little bit about your divination. What the heck started you, I don't want to say quest, because it wasn't offered as a quest. I think it was just, in my understanding and from our conversations, it was more or less spiritually pointed out to you that this is something you should do. How did that start?
My father was dying, and my mother was told that if she wanted to, she was called by the naval-based doctors, and they had my father strapped down to a bed, and he had contracted a very rare disease overseas, and they brought him back to the States, and they had him in this hospital. Told her, if you want to see him alive again, you have to come to the hospital now. My two older sisters were born. They're very, very young. My mother wasn't going to have any other children because the birth of my second oldest sister almost did her and my sister in. It was very hard, and they just were convinced that if she were to try to have another child, her and the child probably wouldn't survive the pregnancy. So they had no intentions on having any more children. But my mother headed down towards the hospital, stopped at the church on the base, went in, and she begged for God to spare my father's life, and for lack of a better phrase, made a bargain with him. She prayed through St. Jude to petition for her to God, and if he found it in his divine majesty to grant her this and spare my father's life, she would, from that moment on, whenever she went to church, she would do it on her hands and knees. And she also promised that she would have another child. Well, she went to the hospital. My father was in a coma, strapped to a bed, because when he came in and out of this coma, he was violent. He tried to hurt people, tried to hurt himself. So she fell asleep at his bedside, woke up in the morning, and my father was sitting up, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, still strapped to the bed. But he asked her, "Edith, what am I doing in this hospital? Why am I all strapped in here?" So she, of course, yelled for all the doctors and nurses to come in. They ran every test imaginable on my father and couldn't find any trace of the disease left. And two of the diseases I know was spinal meningitis and encephalitis. There was a couple of other things going on there, but back then, there was no cure for those. It was a death sentence. So my mom kept her part of the bargain, and until she was too old enough and physically unable to do it, whenever she went to church, she did it on her hands and knees. And she did have another child, and that was, ta-da, yours truly. And I grew up always being teased by her that you're my miracle baby, which drove my sisters crazy. But when I was 10, she told me, well, I started seeing ghosts when I was even younger, and I didn't know what that was all about. I was pretty freaked out. And I remember when my mom and I, before I was in school even, we would take naps, and she would tell me, okay, so that none of these people that you're seeing take you from me, grab a big handful of my hair, and I'm going to grab onto your leg real tight, and we're going to take our naps. And I would see them all around. And eventually my mom, who was very gifted, as my older sisters were, she knew that I had a gift, and she gave me the paranormal speech, so to speak, when I was 10, that I would see a lot of ghosts in my life and not to fear them, that they're just people like us that don't have a body anymore. And if you see one, just ask it is there anything you can do to help it? And if you can, great. If you can't, be honest with it, tell it you can't help it, and then tell it to please be on its way and not to bother you any longer. And I want to say not even 2 years later, around 12, I had my first case basically laid in my lap when I went to spend the night at my sister's house. They were in college at the time, and they were living in a haunted home in Reseda, California. And they had a spirit in there that I saw and then communicated with the following morning after I saw her. And so basically I was on that path of ghost busting. And I tried to hide it from my friends because I was kind of a weird kid, and I didn't want people thinking I was weirder than they already thought I was. But I did help people that knew that I had that gift and could help, would reach out to me from time to time, so I would help with paranormal cases of friends and friends of friends. And then that just snowballed till later on in life. I welcomed it and embraced it more and more and more, and then met Sharon. We fell in love and got married over 16 years ago and became a team. We just hit it right off. I knew when we were talking that she was gifted. She had an interest in that, but had never really taken it to the degree that I had taken it to. And I needed somebody like her to kind of help me out, so I wasn't confronting all this kind of stuff on my own. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh, they say that, do they?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, fine.
I hope it's not history. I hope I have a lot more of it to do.
Excellent. We're talking to Shawn Whittington. He is the Reverend Shawn Whittington. Please go to K-Core. So how am I doing better? K-Core?
Doing great.
K-Core. Go to KCoreRadio.com. Look up Vegas Supernatural. Also, bounce over to his website, Ghost-B-Gone.biz. Ghost-B-Gone.biz, Las Vegas, Nevada. And you can find him also on Facebook under that. Shawn, you've been kind of blessed in the ability through your mother's side of the family. Did you know if your dad's side of the family had anything more of a high vibration like that too? Were they a little bit sensitive on that side, or is it all from your mother?
She was Brazilian. She was born and raised in a tiny village in the north of Bahia called Cruz dos Almas, and that translates as Cross of Souls, and there's no veil there. The dead walk among the living as though they're like real people, and so they grow up in that. But at the same time, being very spiritual, she's a devout Catholic, and that's what I find interesting about her and her family. People on my father's side had to be, because he's got Scottish in him, he's got a lot of Native American in him. There has to be some of that in him to come from such a long line of warriors for Christ. I have to assume that there are many gifted people spiritually in his family tree, but he had a circumstance that happened to him. He served well over 20 years in the Navy, World War II, Korea, Purple Heart recipient, finished his career out in naval intelligence, so he's a very credible. I know near the end of his life, he saw many spirits and finally started even talking about it. I think he hid a lot of it, but I think many on his side had to have had that gift.
I think
gifts like that.
That's very common. Now, you say he comes from a long line of a base Christian religion, and that is where we get a lot of people's abilities to connect to the other side are kind of put on the back burner when you're told that everything you see is bad. Depending on your religious line of Christianity, your family is taking at the time. It's like growing up a very staunch Catholic, like your mother, her village, where they just see dead people walking around, or the ghosts are there. It's completely different from somebody who's a staunch Catholic in Spain who says ghosts are demons and they're all bad. So, and demonologists, and from interviewing demonologists, anything that goes bump in the night is a demon.
Yeah.
So you've got that kind of polluting what you see. So we turn it off when we're young. Now, here's your father. As he gets older, it's been turned off. It's been probably turned off for generations in his side. And now, as he gets older, it's relaxing a bit. It's like, hey, it's good. If it's time to pass, it's time to pass. Everything's good. I found that primarily for us Caucasians, that would be the best way of putting it, non-Indigenous, non-First Nations, unless you're Native American in North America, Native Central American, Native South American, Indian, and I mean India Indians, or Africa, or Australia with the Aboriginal population, going back 200, 300 years, they're still working off of the earth, or living with the earth, I should say, and seeing things and giving them names. And as far as Caucasians go, to find a place where we actually do that is Wales, Ireland, Scotland, Scandinavia, over the top of Europe, and maybe down around the Mediterranean and a few places where the quote-unquote gypsies were. But other than that, for the Caucasians, that stuff was taught out of us.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So it's the Irish side. If you get Irish and Scottish and First Nations, oh my gosh, you don't have to go that far back to actually see our families working with the earth and the earthbound beings. What would be paganism and things like that. They were elemental beings, where when Judaism, basically the Old Testament, and we called all those little sprites we saw in the forest, because we didn't know any better, we would call them like the Greek god of the hillside, Pan. Well, you put the word God on it, therefore you can't do that because it's not a god. But you didn't know, you're just a little villager, so that's got to be a god because it's something with horns. Well, they all became demons. So eventually that was all pushed aside. Could they be demons? Probably, if they're real jerks. I'm sure that monkey on your back intercepting energy from God's source energy into your body is an elemental being, but it's a prick of an elemental being keeping you in addiction and keeping you low, and it has to be removed. They are what they are. They've always been here, and it's like people like you being able to. And again, listener, this is my opinion. This is a beer conversation that Shawn and I have every so often. We kind of go back and forth on, because I've never really encountered things like that, other than I saw a gnome when I was a kid, like literally one of the garden gnome things peeking around the corner out of some grass field. But I don't really see, half human, half stag things in the forest like they used to see. But imagine if you were a staunch Catholic seeing one of those. Well, yeah, of course it's a demon. What else could it be?
Yeah.
So we all come from different lineage, understanding these things. And I think your father, just because of his background, his family background, his family's path, that was all turned off. But he was connected to spirit just like everybody else.
Yes.
Very, very strong. And then, of course, so was your mother. And then you show up and you glow in the dark. And yeah. I think it's absolutely fantastic because you are a ordained Catholic minister. And again, I'm very open to talking to people who are demonologists, as long as they're open-minded enough to know that not everything that hasn't crossed over isn't a demon. And that's why I'm very impressed with what you do, because you go in and you can see these things that are negative in a person's home. And unfortunately, fortunately for some people, but unfortunately for you, that's your divination. And I can see how that could be irritating.
Absolutely.
Walking into a building and then realizing all these black caterpillar things screaming across the roof or not wanting you there. How did that come about in you? Like, what changed in your life to give you that divination where you can actually see the negative?
I wonder if I saw the demonic, saw non-human entities, real malevolent spirits, and then chose somehow something in me knew you're not ready yet. Because I think back and I can't really remember any situations that stood out like that until Sharon and I had our situation where we went to work a case, very ugly case. This entity was, for lack of a better term, raping this young lady who was a newlywed right in the bed next to her husband. And when he would try to intervene and stop this from happening, he would come under attack. We worked that case, and we were just ghostbusters, ghost hunters, what have you. And whatever was there followed us home one night from that case and took up residence in our home for about 8 weeks. And during that time, coming under attack, I had to reach out to the paranormal community and try and get some help, because it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. That led me to being introduced to my then mentors. And after figuring out how to get this thing with their help to move on and get out of my house, it was just natural for my next step, from them talking to me also, that you should finish your training and become ordained. Again, I'm still a devout Catholic, but I was ordained through a Christian university and an American Association of Exorcists and an American Society of Exorcists. So that's when I started on the path to become ordained. But then Sharon was left with, from that attack, with 3 very rare forms of cancer. And the thing is Sharon was the healthiest person I knew at that time. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, no history of cancer in her family. And then to practically overnight, after we get this thing to leave, her to come down with a very rare form of tongue cancer, medullary thyroid cancer, and throat cancer, was about as diabolic of an attack as you can come under. I was in denial of that also, but a good friend of mine was actually on his deathbed on the East Coast, dying from advanced colon cancer. He was an atheist, and he actually called me one night, hours before he died, told me that he had seen God, and that God told him for me not to worry, that Sharon wasn't going to die, because she had already been given the death sentence by the doctors.
Wow.
That she wasn't going to die, and that I needed to continue to fight those responsible. So I felt I'm caught between a rock and a hard spot, and that's when I started realizing what my mother meant when she told me at 10, you're going to do something great for God one day. I never realized what that was and went through most of my life not knowing, but it hit me like a bolt of lightning that night. That's what that was. I was created to do this, and I have to see this through. So I took a page out of her book. Many nights I went to bed with Sharon convinced I was going to wake up in the next morning, she would be dead, because she had a feeding tube in for over a year, couldn't swallow water or talk for almost a year. They wanted to take her tongue out. She went through 35 straight treatments of radiation right in her mouth, 8 weeks of chemo that almost killed her. I mean, it was bad. And so I had to take a little time off because I had to deal with that. But I still kept my training going. And, did the cancer doctors and the chemo and the radiation and all of that stuff save my wife's life? Absolutely. But was there also extreme divine intervention involved? Absolutely. Because I would crawl on my hands and knees many times at church late at night begging for God to spare Sharon's life while she's at home sleeping. It was I don't wish what we went through those 5 years on anybody, on my worst enemy. So now, and now when I go to that's all the kind of cases that come across my desk now. There's no regular ghost cases that come across my case. It's all really dark, malevolent, in nature types of cases. And when I go to these places, that's my discernment. They start talking to me right away. I hear them as if somebody's standing right next to me, speaking to me in my ear, and they always attack Sharon. They always tell me what they're going to do to her if I don't leave, what they're going to do to the client if I don't leave. Oh, it's just you? Why didn't you bring Sharon with you? We're not done with her yet. And I had to get over that. Mm-hmm. I walked out of many a case going, I'm done, because I'm too worried about what's going to happen around me. I can't even bring people on cases with me, other investigators, because I'm afraid for them. I don't want to be responsible for that. But I just am, like I said, I feel blessed, and I know that somebody's got my back. Things have happened to me. I've been under attack before, a couple of times so bad that I did leave the field. I said, I'm absolutely done. God, I'm sorry. I can't do this any longer. I tried. I just can't do it. But something would always happen to let me know that they had my back and that they were still there, and I was still meant to do this. So I would just find myself at the next case, sometimes wondering, what am I doing? How am I here now, walking up to this front door again, about to knock on this door again? I thought I was done with this. I know people are looking outside their windows watching me talk to myself in their yard, and they probably are wondering, who's this crazy man that we asked to come over to our home? But I can pull up to houses, and it can be high noon here in Vegas. During the summers, it's like living on Mars. Mm-hmm. There's no shade, but homes will look like I'm looking at them through sunglasses, and I know that house is extremely infested, and I can just tell. So I'll start talking to myself, how am I here again? And I'm just human. I have no magic powers. I'm always frightened. Not for me, but I'm always frightened for Sharon. I'm frightened for my clients. I'm frightened about what's going to happen. But something takes over, and I've been told by people that are with me on cases, whether it be Sharon or clients, that I change. Something comes over me, and I think I'm just too focused and too into the job at hand once I'm in there to worry about it. And I try my best to complete the task and bring closure to the case. But I fail miserably at them all the time, more than I'd like to admit. But that's part of the job too, and you have to take the bad with the good. You can't, You can't make it all better for all the people that call you for help. You try, but you just can't. And once you realize that all you can do is the best you can do, it's rough. I have a lot of colleagues in the field that find that one of the most difficult things to deal with. And I agree with them. And having to cut people loose that just aren't willing to help them.
That's the hardest part.
Oh my gosh, it's a heartbreaker. And then when the families break up, and the families move, and somebody is either already possessed or so oppressed that it's probably going to happen, they disappear on you, and you don't know what happened to them. You always take the whole brunt of that guilt. What didn't I do? What did or didn't I do to cause that reaction? And you never know. Just got.
Here, I'll give you some advice on that feeling coming from a policeman. You can be called to help somebody, and you can point out all the things that they have to do, and that's what your job is. And then you cannot dwell on the fact that they don't go and check off all the boxes on that list you gave them. You've given them an idea of how to fix the problem, and you help them as best you can with it, but it isn't your problem. It is your position to point out ways to fix it and then move on to the next person. Because if you take on that person's energy and you start, and this is the weirdest thing, I didn't know anything what an empath was, and I didn't know you take on other people's all their energies and things like this, and you kind of take on other people's problems. I was about 8 months into a police job, and I would go to your house and you'd say, James, someone stole my bicycle, and by the time I finished talking to you, it was like someone stole our bicycle.
Yeah.
And I remember working on a stolen lawnmower, riding lawnmower file that was probably half an inch thick by the time I handed it in to my sergeant. I had friggin' paint samples from vehicles it just went on, and my boss looked at me and said, it was a riding lawnmower. Put the serial number on the computer in case somebody runs it, and give them a file number for their insurance. And he says, empathize with people, but do not take on their challenges. So when you go to a house, and I can imagine you walking into especially in Las Vegas, with the stresses and the type of land that entire city's been built on, centuries old, and the amount of different types of energies that are out there. You walk into somebody's house, and it's like walking in and their dining room table's on fire. You can tell them how to put the fire out, but when you look at them and they're both shooting flames out of their eyes, you can't fix that. So it's not your place to fix it. It was your place to make contact with them. Maybe that contact you had at that one point in 2005 on a Wednesday, even though you couldn't fix it, 20 years from now, that piece of the puzzle, that piece of jigsaw puzzle you left on their table as you walked away, is going to mean something. And that's why you were there. So at the end of your life, when you turn around and you look back at every person you have come in contact with in your life, some of those contacts have been negative, most have been positive. But even the ones, that original contact that was negative, and I see this as a peace officer, I may arrest somebody when they were 17 years old and they were in a really low portion of their life, a really low point. And at that time, it was a very negative interaction to them. At the end of their life, I'm sure when they look back, I was just a little bit of a bumper, like the kids' bowling lane, when those bumpers come up, trying to get them back on course. And if they never went back on course, at least I was put into their life at that time to help them. just like you are put into those people's lives to help them. We're not here to fix everything. That's not our job. That job goes up the food chain. When I mean up the food chain, I am pointing up right now.
Yeah.
That's not our job. So don't worry about it. You do the best you can with the time you have. Turn your back and walk away. And that'll be $1. Because that's almost a lecture that I give young policemen. It's like, just do the best you can at the time you're there. Do everything right. Do the best you can. Turn your back and walk away. Because you can't fix everything. And one of the things I used to say, I would draw a line, very thin line on a chalkboard, or on the whiteboards now. And I'd say, okay, imagine this line 20,000 miles long, 800 feet high. And that's beginning of time to now, or to the end of time. Now you take a hair, you put it on that line, and you cut that hair into 1,000 pieces, and that's the point your life is in history. There was criminals before that. There will be criminals after that. And your life, the span of your life being that really thin hair, you've only been a policeman. You're going to be a policeman for 25, 30 years. So you're not going to fix everything. So relax. Don't come running into the job thinking, I'm here, I will solve all crime. No, you won't. It was going on before you were born. It'll be going on when your great-grandchildren are dust. It's like, you can't fix it. So just do your best in that very small piece of time we have on this planet. And that's it. And Shawn, you do your best on that little space you have on this planet. And it'll all work out.
Well said.
Like I say, that'll be $1. But that's, never fear. When you come into those houses, I know what it's like to walk into a house where things are going sideways. Not in the same breath that you would take with that negative, demonic energy. That is something, bless you, that you can see. I don't want to. And that is, that's the duffel bag you carry on your back. When did you tell a story about the cross and you?
There's a few of them. Are we talking about when I found myself?
Yes. That one. That was easy.
Yeah, that is a. It's funny. I think about that all the time. There's a few things, life-changing things that happen in your life. I can count them on both hands. I haven't had a ton of them. Like my book coming out, I felt my life change when Sharon walked in the house Thursday with my shipment of books. Another thing was the night that happened, because now you have to understand that's my first case back after taking almost a year off, because the case before that was a severe demonic attack that I encountered on a case. And I honestly felt that I was dying, and it was either, I'm going to say that it was my guardian angel. Did it sound like her? No, because I've saw her twice before. She sounded different. She actually sounded like a woman who was my mentor at the time. And me and her argue about it all the time. She says, well, it could be me, because one of my gifts of discernment is when I work very close with a protege, I can sense when they're in danger. And even though I might have been, in another state and asleep, I might have known that you were in that kind of danger and projected myself out to you and told you, pray, dummy, pray, because it was her voice, and that's something she would say. But I think my guardian angel said it to me in that voice, because otherwise than that, I might not have recognized it and just maybe ignored it and continued to allow whatever was happening to me at that time finish what it was doing, and maybe you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. But it was frightening enough to the point where I was really, really done. I was finally at that I'm done point. But a pastor friend of mine reached out to me, said, there's a case I need your help with. And I didn't want to go on it. She begged, and finally I went. And it was on that case that I had what I honestly feel. Now, I argue with some of my colleagues about this. Some think that I saw St. Michael. I don't think so. I think I saw the Holy Spirit. I don't think it was St. Michael. Nevertheless, that situation had me rethinking my decision to walk away, but I wasn't all the way back yet. But I got a call one night from a mother who was just so distraught and so upset about what was going on. And the story she told me was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. I knew that if I didn't go and help, they wouldn't get any help. And so that's why I found myself. Now, Sharon's really sick at the time. I had to actually make sure she was okay and sleeping soundly and write her a note. If you wake up and I'm not here, this is where I went. I've got to go look in on this case real quick. So I didn't worry about her too much. She's in bed with 2 large mastiffs that are protecting her. I know that, she's okay, but hopefully it'll be okay that I'm leaving. So I went on this case, and the mother tells me this story about how she had 2 sons, and her youngest son came home from school one day really shaken because apparently some very odd child approached him at the park, wanted to play with him, but nobody else at the park could see him but the boy. So the boy ended up running home, and he said the little kid chased him all the way home. Well, the mother thought that, well, if he's not imagining this, maybe there's some weird kid that did chase him home. Let me go out and look. She looked all around, up and down the street, around the house. According to her, didn't see nothing. About 3 o'clock in the morning that night, her youngest son crawled into bed with her. But almost immediately, she knew that there was something wrong, because all of a sudden it felt like she was laying down in a meat locker, and a terrible stench came over her. And when she turned the nightlight on her to the bedside, probably a nightstand there, turned over, there was nobody in the bed. She asked her son that morning if he had crawled into bed with her that night. He said no, that was the little boy. She goes, what little boy? He goes, the one I told you about. I came down for a snack late last night, and he was at the back door asking to come in, and I let him in. Well, she didn't think nothing of it. She was suspicious, but moral of the story, anybody out there listening, I don't even open my door at noon if somebody knocks. Don't open your door at night when somebody knocks asking to come in, especially if it's a creepy little child. So he, and I mean, this came on quick. The quickest case of demonic possession that I've ever experienced. I mean, we're talking 48 hours. He was expelled from school, and this is a little kid, 10 years old, expelled from school, got in a fight with his older brother, almost killed him. She had to send the son to a neighbor's house to spend the night because he got so violent. And when she had called me, she said, my son is locked in his bedroom, and I need you to come over and help me get in there and get to him. When I pulled down the street, she was sitting on the curb in front of her house in her nightgown, and I knew that this must be the place. I pulled out. She told me, go, you have my permission to go in. His bedroom's at the top of the stairs. You can't miss it. The door's shut and it's barricaded. I said, aren't you coming in with me? She said, no. So I go in the house. I knew immediately because it just, it felt like I was at high altitude. My ears were ringing, a lot of pressure in there, like a big man had his hands on the sides of my head, pushing my head in. Bad smells, bad noises, just bad feeling, bad vibes. I walk upstairs. I can't get the door open. I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Finally was able to get the door open enough to where I could squeeze through. And I could see somebody sitting on their rear end in the opposite corner of the room, almost like Indian position, on their butt, knees pulled up to their chest. I get through the door. I realize what was up against the door was this big bunk bed, because he shared the room with his brother, his older brother. I take 2 or 3 steps into the room, and I assume it's the child sitting there. He looks up at me, and it's a 100-year-old man, if he's a day old, that I don't know, sitting there staring at me. And I take 1 or 2 more steps, and then I get hit by this feeling, and it's exactly the same feeling that hit me when I had my attack. And the only thing I could think of was, oh no. And I think I gave up. I think, oh no, it's going to happen again. And I remember I don't remember anything, but I must have collapsed, because when I came to, I'm just like a sack of potatoes. I fell in on myself, and I'm just down. I'm outside. In like the desert.
What?
And so many things are going through my mind. Did I get mugged? Was somebody waiting for me in the room? Did they hit me over the head, drag me out to the desert? Did I get mugged? I look around. I'm not bleeding anywhere. I still have feeling. I'm breathing. I look over, and I can still see the old man sitting 5 feet from me on his butt in the dirt, staring down. I know that I'm in the desert, but I'm not in the desert. And there's just so much dread over me that I can't even move. And then a shadow comes over me from the right to left across the dirt. And it's not the shadow of a person, but it's a big enough shadow that it draws my attention. So I look over to my right, and I'm staring at what appears to be a badly mutilated human being hung on a tree. It doesn't take me just a moment to realize I'm looking at Christ, and I must be on Calvary. And I figured I'm dead, and I have to make a choice. Am I going to go to hell, or am I going to go to heaven? So like a little boy, I crawl on my hands and knees over to the cross, touch it to make sure it's real, and whether it's a hallucination or not, I want to know that I've made the right choice and that this is real to me. Cross was real. I look up, and Jesus is unrecognizable. It doesn't look like I said, he looks like a big slab of meat a butcher just hung up on a tree. That's how badly beaten and mutilated he is. Did I see nails in his feet and hands? No. Did he look like he was more tied to this tree? Yes. Did the tree look like a cross? Yes, but it looked like a tree that was carved into a cross. So I climb up to my hands and knees. I stand up. I have to actually get on my tippy toes to kiss Jesus on his left foot. And to this day, I always remember, whenever I look at a crucifix, I look at the feet to see if left is over right. And I see many of them with the right over left, or they're side by side. And that, it doesn't bother me. But I always remember, if I don't see left over right, that's not what I saw. I saw left over right, the feet. I kissed him on his left foot, and I still today can remember the taste of the dirt and the mud and the dry blood on this foot that I kissed. And the moment I kissed that foot, I had a flashback of a time when I was being chased home by 3 bullies back in New Jersey. And they were going to beat me probably to death. That's how vicious these 3 bullies were, and they were a lot older than me. And they followed me home from school and started chasing me. And I was running and running and running and running. And my father worked about an hour and a half away, and would always leave. He was gone. When I would wake up in the morning to get ready for school, he was gone. And he would be coming home just as I'm going to bed. So 3 o'clock in the afternoon probably, what were the chances that when I ran across the street, my father's coming home from work early that day and almost runs me over, but I just fall down in front of his car. He has to slam on the brakes, get out of the car, come to help me. And it's that feeling like nothing can harm me now. I'm saved. My Savior, my guardian angel, God, whoever, I'm saved now. Same feeling when my father got out, because he turned around, and I can't even tell you what he did to those 3 kids. But they never bothered me again. And after he did his thing with them, he got me in the car, took me home. Never forgot that. But that's the feeling I had when I kissed Jesus' foot. And I just, like a champion, I turned around, and I just knew what I had to do. It was like somebody had taken their arm around me and was walking me through everything. Walked over to the old man. Now I can see beyond him, and there's a path going down a hill, and there's several dark cloaked figures at the bottom of the hill, and several of these black dogs. I write about these black dogs in my book because I had a case where I ran into them again. Look out for them. I don't like to call them the hounds of hell. That's so dramatic, but I've had a case where I worked them after that, so I knew how to handle them. But I see these dogs down there and these cloaked figures. I know that that's hell. So I get down, and I know how I know this isn't an old man. I can't tell you, but I know it's not an old man. So I get down on my knees in front of this old man, and I put holy water on him. I put holy oil on him. I start putting hands on him and praying and praying and praying. I probably said the Our Father 50 times. He looks, and I can see it's an old man still. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of a blackout thing again, but I can see that it's the young boy, and now we're back in his bedroom. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and we don't say a word, but we both start crying. We know something miraculous has happened. I help him up to his feet, and we both walk out of that room. And we walk downstairs, and his mother's already back in the house waiting for us downstairs. We never said a word. The look on her face was she knew something miraculous had happened. We sit down at the table, and the only thing I can think to say is anybody hungry? And they both just shook their heads yes. I pick up the phone. I ordered Papa John's, which was just down the street, and we had the Papa John's guy come and deliver us pizza. And we sat there, and we ate pizza, and we drank soda, and we talked about everything other than what had happened. And I'm happy to say that the family did move. She was originally from Louisiana, but didn't want to come back there. Possibly a transgenerational curse, because she's Creole, had a lot of ancestors and family members into old Southern hoodoo and voodoo and all that sort of stuff that goes on down there in Louisiana. I'm just guessing. I don't know for sure why this happened to them and why it happened so quick, but they did move to LA to be with other family, and the last time I spoke to them, no more issues. They're all healthy, happy, doing great.
My goodness. We're talking to Shawn Whittington. He is the good Reverend Shawn Whittington. He is the author of the new book, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, a Supernatural and Spiritual Autobiography by Reverend Shawn Patrick Whittington, which came out on St. Patrick's Day on Sunday, and had his big book launch radio show.
There's a reason it came out on St. Patrick's Day. Everybody asks me that.
Tell me about this St. Patrick's launch.
Did you like that?
Patrick.
Did you like how I led you right into that?
Yeah.
I love this. I'm telling you, brother, I love this. This, if anything about this whole situation I love, is how it all happened. And nobody can convince me otherwise that Spirit didn't have this all arranged on the other side. I'm born in 1959, baptized under St. Patrick as my guardian saint. 59 years later to the day, on my 59th birthday, I find out the book is getting published and that it's going to come out on St. Patrick's Day.
Wow, that's crazy. And you have no control over when it was going to be published, right?
No. or that I was going to hear about it on my 59th birthday. I'd already sent the book out to a half a dozen or so publishers.
Interesting.
One hated the book. Two never got back to me. A couple of them wanted me to totally rewrite it in a different style. How do you rewrite an autobiography? One publisher said, you've got to look at it as though you're looking at you through somebody else's eyes. I could never grasp that, what she was telling me. Instead of so Reverend Shawn then walked down an alley rather than, so at this point I chose to walk down this alley. When you're writing about yourself, I mean, I'm not a writer. I'm not Stephen King. My book's never going to be on the New York Times bestsellers list. But I knew that I couldn't spend another 3 years rewriting my autobiography in a style that I had no clue how to do it. So I just, like you said earlier in the show, you did it, let it go, and I did. But then I heard from this one publisher, Annette Munich, who I love to death, Stellium Books, the owner of Stellium Publishing and Stellium Books, was so over and heels in love with it, and she did such a wonderful job. But she called me on my 59th birthday to tell me the book, I love the book, and I want to publish it. So unless you've already decided to go with somebody else, I want to be your gal. I said, it's all yours. And I knew her. I was comfortable with her. I trust her. Very talented woman. I said, let's do this. So I said, so what are we talking about for release date? She didn't get right back to me right away. Probably in the next week or so, she got back to me and said, it'll be out St. Patrick's Day, which is March 17th, and it's a weekend. That's the tentative date we're looking at right now. And I just said, well, it's not tentative anymore. You better stick with that. And when I told her why, she did everything in her power to make sure that happened, because we both knew that was meant to be.
Yeah, that's a clue. As a policeman, we look at that as a clue.
Yeah, not to be confused with the board game Clue, which is also very...
Yeah.
Do you ever miss being a cop?
No. I think the people who would miss it may have been a different type of police. I looked at myself, in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, we call ourselves peace officers. When you go to court, you're sworn in, you say, my name is James Tyson, I'm a peace officer and member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and was so employed on the date that's blah, blah, blah before the court. I wasn't the running, jumping fences, yelling and screaming at people, driving fast. It's a different culture. So you get called to somebody who needs a hand, you give them a hand and you move on. And as long as you're comfortable when you leave that there are other people doing that who are taking your spot, then move on. And again, look at my theory. There was stuff happening before I was born, and there will be stuff happening long after I'm dead. So
absolutely.
I just think that as long as I did my best to touch people's lives positively in that 28-year span, I'm happy to move on and let somebody else do that. And that's the best way of putting it. I don't miss it. I'm very critical of the way police do things. I'm still a supervisor in my eyes. When I see, I would never let anybody who worked with me talk to a client, whether they were a good guy or a bad guy. A client is a client. But take sunglasses off. Never talk to somebody with your sunglasses on. You're wearing a mask, so they're not really seeing the real person you are. These young guys express that to them and say, why are you talking to that fellow with your, you pulled over a car and you left your sunglasses on when you're talking to him. Well, I don't want him to see my eyes that I'm looking in his car. And I said, and if he saw your eyes that you were looking in his car, would that be bad? And the kid looked at me and went like, oh, because don't you think he knows you're going to be looking in his car? Like, smarten up. Just take your glasses off. It's like wearing a hat, the typical forge cap, that little typical police hat. I would wear it, and the reason I wore it was so I had something to take off my head when I walked up to somebody, because you are literally about 4.5 inches taller wearing that hat. And you take it off, stick it under your arm and bend down and talk to somebody and look them in the eye, especially with kids. extremely more personable than standing up with your arms crossed with your sunglasses on like some kind of robot. So I'm critical of policing, but I would never go out and want to do it all over again. But that's me. We're talking to Shawn Whittington. He is the Reverend Shawn Whittington. Vegas Supernatural. Please drop by, check him out. His wonderful radio show every Monday night, live 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and has a flagon of paranormal, supernatural guests on each Monday night. And he's at K-Core. Trying to get that rolling off my tongue, and it's not really doing it, but K-Core. So you can
and I bet you can't even guess why next Monday's episode is going to be so great.
Next Monday's? Oh, hold on. You have a really cool guest. Oh, no, it's me. Never mind. Yeah. And I think I'm going to be in Oregon. I'm going to be at the Oregon Ghost Conference.
I don't care where you're at. I'll find you.
Yeah, get me off, track your ass down. Hey, Shawn, what do you think this plan I have on Patreon, where if you donate $3 to my Patreon, and eventually if I get 4,500 people donating $3, I'll get you out to various conferences. I said 4,500, you'd be going to conferences or paranormal events or locations around the world. At 2,222, it'll be, if you live in London, England, you'll be going to Ireland, or vice versa, or New Zealand, you'll be going to Australia. But North America-wise, you'll be bouncing from Vegas to, well, what the heck? I always use Gettysburg for an example, but if you like ghosts, or if you like UFOs, I'll send you down to Pasadena for the UFO conference. What do you think about doing that, kind of giving back to the listener?
I love it. And it's like, I know even on our station, they've thought about starting to charge like a membership, giving people access to all the archives all the time for all of the shows that are on there. Right now they're free. And I think there's a market for every idea, for every audience out there. I think, just like anything, I think there's people that are going to love that to death. And you know how it is. I pay for my airtime at K-Core. Right. I talk to a lot of people that are so surprised when I tell them that. It is what it is. That's just, it is what it is. And there's many places you go where the talent doesn't pay for their airtime. The shows aren't the best, the sound quality is not the best, and the talent doesn't seem to be taken care of quite as well as like K-Core always takes very good care of me. I love the idea, and I think you're going to do quite well at it. And who doesn't want to? Only because you're so good at what you do, and you always have really good, except for today, you always have really great guests on, and people love that. Then you have access to all of your podcasts all the time, and a chance to have a vacation paid for somewhere around the world.
But you'll have to work.
Pardon?
They're going to have to work, because I'm going to go with them, and I'm going to be videotaping and interviewing them as they experience the various supernatural hotspots around the world.
That's to me personally, it's a win-win, and so I think it's a great thing you're doing, and I'm going to give you plenty of opportunity to Monday night. My listeners want to hear about everything you got going on, because you were kind of MIA for a while, and everybody knows I'm your friend. Reached out to me and said, "Where's James? Where's Mr. Tyson? What's going on with him?" I'm like, "He's working on something, and I can promise you when he resurfaces, it's going to be knock your socks off brilliant. So be patient." And it is. Your situation, I think, is going to be great.
Well, thanks very much. And if for those listening out there, if you want to come to my website, theoracleswithjamestyson.com, just click on the Patreon link if you want to donate your $3 a month. That not only gets you in once we get over that 2,222 mark for trips, but that'll be drawing once a month. But the rest of the time, every month, we're going to be drawing for psychic readings, past life regressions, And a friend of mine just offered, what is that thing? The numerology readings. So she's going to throw those in too, which is really cool. I never thought of that. So we have all these things that are coming if you're a Patreon. And it's only 4,500 people max. So, the odds that you're going to get something anyway within a short amount of time would be pretty cool. And again, I'm retired. I don't really need any money, so I'll be probably drawing a lot of names quite often in the month. There may be more than one or two psychic readings or past life regressions. So
I'm just throwing this out there to you, like between now and the time that you get a winner and you decide where you guys are going, you may need an assistant to travel with you, and just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Oh no, I have no problem. Or also end up heading off to somewhere that you'd be interested in too, because I may draw the name of somebody who only likes UFO and Bigfoot things.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to take them out to a haunted house. I am going to find a good place where they could go out Bigfooting and UFOing. So,
that's so cool. That is so cool.
It'll be based on the person's likes, as opposed to, okay, let's go to the Winchester Mansion and get lost in a corner somewhere. Well, I don't really do the ghost thing, but have
you been there?
No, I haven't. Have you?
No, I want to go so bad. It's like, I have a dozen or so places on a list that before I leave this journey, I want to get to, and that's definitely got to be one of them. So yeah,
you know what you can do though, when you pass, just make a deal with your guide that comes down. You say, hey, look, give me a week. I want to go to the Winchester Mansion, and I want to go to. But
that's funny you bring that up. Let me ask you, and I've been asking a lot of people this lately. Mm-hmm. And the answers I get have been so intriguing, and so a variety of different answers I've gotten from guests and friends and stuff. That's why I keep recycling the same questions every week on my show. But what do you plan to do? Are you going to be content to go ahead and cross over when the time comes, or do you want to stick around and haunt?
No, I'm going to be content to cross over, because what I found happens... for example, my mother has crossed over, but she goes to what is now a strip club in Vancouver, British Columbia, called the Penthouse.
Okay.
But when she goes there, she walks in 1950, and she is there with all her friends, listening to the bands. Where it wasn't a strip club, it was a nightclub, and she dances.
Oh, very cool.
But she has crossed over. And of course, time being man-made, she is with me as a in-between my spirit guides and myself. She is the goosebumps on my arm, my gut feeling. She's the one who kicks me in the gut when it's time to do something. But she also goes back to the places that she liked to go to. So, if she liked to go fishing or whatever, she could go do that. She's hanging out with her great-grandchildren, grandchildren, and she's, still going to she's in her late 20s dancing in the bar with her friends.
That is so cool.
So the reason I know she's there is that there is a gentleman who has not crossed over, who is literally working the door in that nightclub. He was murdered in 1945. This nightclub didn't open until 1947, but this guy's working the front door. And through a psychic, Skeeter Wellhouse, I sent her a photograph of the address of this place. She took a deep breath, walked in, described everything in the place, and we had a conversation with the guy in the zoot suit at the door, and who volunteered that he knew my mother because she still comes there. So, which is a whole other conundrum. He, as a human energy that had not crossed over, actually can see those human energies that have crossed over. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yes.
Which is very, very interesting. And he knows my mom. And he said that she still goes there with her friends, which is amazing. And when it's time for my mother to do her thing and carry on into whatever the universe, whatever God has planned for her, she can take that deep breath and move on. Because again, time is man-made. It's a blink in the universe's eye, and she'll move on. But until then, you can do whatever you want, and you come back a lot stronger. Now, I've gone, and you probably, doing paranormal investigations, you've probably been asked to come because little Billy is standing up in the crib talking to the invisible person. And you get there and you can't get anything. You can't find a ghost in the house because it's not a ghost. It's an energy. It's the grandmother energy that came back to talk to Billy in his crib. So, they know they know we're coming, and it's not us. It's not our responsibility to actually come in contact with them because they're crossed over. So they just take a deep breath and leave. It's like, we're not ghosts. So, we have a lot of those dropping by. So yeah, you can be a nice old person and come back and visit your great grandkids or your great grandkids or whatever you'd like to do before you move on in your next tasking and which part of your life comes in. Well, here's one for you, young man. What do you think happens to us when we die?
I'm kind of a traditionalist when it comes to that. And this comes from many people that I've talked to that have had near-death experiences, like Sharon, even my wife. She saw the big tunnel, the bright light at the end. Actually, in her circumstance, got to the end of that tunnel and went in to what she said was a huge open area that was the beauty of this and the serenity of this area was off the charts, unlike anything she'd ever experienced in her life. Didn't want to leave. Saw all of her former, and it's like maybe it's ancestors you never met in this lifetime, but somehow you know who they are.
Yep.
When you get over there. So she's seen just a group of people that are family in blood waving at her and waving for her to continue to come forward. And then she was heard a voice say, "It's not your time, Sharon. I'm sending you back." She actually argued a little bit and said, "I don't want to go back." But he said, "No, you have to go back." And she was actually just swooshed back down through the tunnel and found herself awake back in her body again. I picture something like that, and I'm comfortable with crossing on because, let's say I live 100 years. My father lived well into his 90s, my mom well into her 80s. I try to take good care of myself, but you never know. But let's say I live to 100. What else am I going to do? What can you do then? It's time to move on. I just find it amazing if this whole reincarnation thing, or if we're talking about past lives, you're going to have them again probably. What happens for you to make the decision? Does someone come to you and say, "So Shawn, now you've been in heaven now for 500 years. Just thought I would ask you, have you been getting an itch to want to do another lifespan again?"
Well, my understanding from the people that I've been interviewing over the years is that once we cross over, we go to a thing called the Blue Room. In the first part of the Blue Room, and we have a chance to step in and out of this room too, and take a breather, literally. You go into the Blue Room where you must accept, in the first part, that these are the things that you did in life that negatively affected other people, and you get to feel those. So you and I have a thread that's between us. It's called downloading your threads. You and I have a thread. It's a positive thread. But let's say I bullied you as a kid in grade school. I would download that negative thread, and I have to feel what you felt every time I bullied you. And that if that bullying led you to bully somebody else, I have to feel that continuation of bullying. And it goes on and on and on. And you feel all the negative you've done to other people, and you have to accept it. This is where you accept, yes, this is my penance. This is what I did. And you can take a step out of there if it's too negative and come back in, but you have to before you can move on, you have to get that negative side out. Once that negative one is done, you do the positive one. So at least when you leave the blue room, you're all kind of a little bit happy. You should be very happy.
Can you imagine what serial killers must go through?
Well, here's one for you. Imagine Hitler.
People like that?
You get somebody like Hitler, who every time some kid opens a history book and has that, oh, crap feeling, like he'll never leave that room. In fact, some people say he actually made a deal with God to come back as a man of the cloth, to work for God so he wouldn't have to deal with the blue room. And the psychic who told me that said that it didn't work. He screwed up, and God basically punted him back. So he probably died at the age of 25, and they sucked him back into the blue room, and that's where he is forever, every time somebody opens that book. So, yeah, and you're right. A serial killer has to deal with the pain that he, not only on the people that he killed, but he has to feel it on how it felt to their family and their extended family, and everybody opened that book up reading on serial killers, or everybody that read the newspaper at the time.
Or everybody that is told the Holocaust didn't exist.
Yes.
How that makes them feel, descendants of Holocaust survivors or people that died during the Holocaust, that they're told to their face they never existed. That pain. And then it just goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, and once you get out of the blue room, it's actually a friend of mine who passed away a few years ago. He came back and he said, it's like going to, I said to the psychic, I said, it's like he's going to school. And she says he's laughing, saying, it's like going to university. You basically understand why you exist, where you fit into the great scheme of things, and what it is, why you were in the life you were in. And you get all that. And that you also lose your judgment. And I always say, it's not like you now ride your bike in traffic. It's you can no longer judge others, because judgment is not our job. It belongs to a greater power. So you can come back, and like your grandmother is, let's say, standing in your living room while you and your wife are fooling around, juggling Jell-O or whatever. All your grandmother sees is that love and light. Shawn's happy. Everything's okay. So they can't judge you, which is a good thing if in the great scheme of things. Absolutely. What else can I tell you? Oh, so that's what I understand is the after death thing. So once you in that, if you've, and we get into the Akashic records, and this is what I plan to do in this life, and I've experienced from A to Z in this life, let's try it again. But next time I want to be the pilot, or next time I want to be a girl, or I want to be somebody with a special needs, or I want to do something else on my soul's path. And then Spirit, God allows you, accepts that and lets you go. So it's that what if. I'm still in the what if. When I cross ghosts over, we cross the criminals over because, and I can't remember, there's a term, you might know this term, it's a religious term for people who believe that as a result of Jesus dying for our sins, no one can be punished for sinning. There's a term for that.
I'd be interested to know which belief system is attached to that, because I'm taught both through Catholicism. Well, through Catholicism, you're also told there's no judgment, but I do believe we have to answer for our sins depending on what they are. And through Christianity also, Jesus did die for our sins, and that's why, like, for instance, I go to confession and get absolved from all my sins. But I do believe, like, if you were like Hitler, what you did is going to make a difference, and there's going to be some judgment, and there's going to be some pain for that. Paying for that when you cross over.
Yeah.
So for there not to be, because I've I've encountered spirits that knew they were dead and saw the light, but were afraid to cross because they thought there'd be judgment.
Because they coveted their neighbor's wife, and yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, those are the ones, like one of the 4 groups that we cross over. The children, those who don't know they're dead, those who are still on task or have something to do, and those, because of religious beliefs, think they're going to be punished. So we cross them over. Usually a friend of theirs will come through and say, look, they're telling the truth. You've been forgiven. You just have to accept what you've done. And that's that first part of the blue room. You have to live the pain you caused.
Yeah.
And again, you can take a step out of that room, and some people may take years in our time to go through that. Many, many, many years. Or those who are so horrific will never leave that room. But
yeah, I can imagine. I wonder if you get to see them too. You go into the blue room and you got your little chair and your little monitor there, but you look over and it's all
about us when we're there.
Oh, okay, I got you.
You have a guide that's with you, but you can't. And the other thing you cannot do, you cannot get out of that room if they show you your life video in front of you, and it's got you bullying your grade school friend, and you say, well, no, that's not me. Well, yeah, you're not going anywhere, buddy. You've got to accept what you did, and you have to wear it, or you're never leaving this room, and you're just going to feel that pain over and over and over again. So, again, once that's done, off you go to the next one, which is all the good stuff. One of the things we bring up all the time with this is Robin Williams. He committed suicide. So in his negative one, he's got to feel the sadness that everyone felt as fans when he took his own life. So he has to feel but once that's done, he gets to go to the good stuff and go through that. So this is what why some people the spirit of their grandmother crosses over, and 6 months later or 2 weeks later they see their grandmother hanging out in their house talking to the great grandkids. And then sometimes your grandfather will cross over and you may not see him for a little bit longer, because it depends on how long it takes them to go through the process of learning and what they want to do once they come out of that process. But anyway, belief systems, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm like you. We have this show because we have these questions. And there's so many people willing to give us their own opinion. And I take a little bit from this, a little bit from that, see how it works, see how things go together, ridicule people who think we live on a flat earth. Oh, sorry. I have my opinions, and I'm not afraid to say them, but yeah. And at the end of the day, like Art Bell, you only know what's real after you leave this plane.
Right.
And we're not leaving for a long time. So we're good, Shawn. Everybody else can go. But we're going to hang out. I still have to go to Vegas and see how... I can imagine the crap that you see down there in negative energy.
It's everywhere. It's unless I do have to go out and work a case, I go to my day job at the animal hospital. I come home and that's where I stay. I'm happy to be here with Sharon and my 2 mastiffs, and I do the radio show from home. I'm teaching 2 online courses at a Bible college, so I'm working with my students, and I'm just happy to be here. But we go out and go to dinner occasionally, go catch a movie every once in a while. But the world is just so crazy right now. I don't like to venture out much. It's just really, really crazy.
It's all good. You crazy empath, that's all. There's Shawn, the perfect empath job. He works in an animal hospital.
Yeah.
And you're teaching.
Yeah.
So it's like I always say, most empaths are women. I say, so you're a teacher or a nurse? Or a doctor? I'm a counselor. How did you know that? Oh, okay, never mind. Because we do things because we like helping people. and I'll be darned if I can remember that term for people who believe that Jesus died for your sins and therefore you can't be punished again for sinning. But you have to accept
yeah, that's
your own...
interesting. Because, yeah, I'm taught he died for our sins. And
so if he died for our sins, why could we still be punished? Wouldn't that be a waste of God sacrifices his only child?
I don't think punishment is probably the wrong term. Like, Hitler's not being punished. He just, like you said, he's got to come to terms
he's got to accept
with what he did. But it's not punishment. They probably don't view it as that. No, but you have to come to terms.
You got to own it.
You know, you may be in here and like you said, time is man-made, so even if he's in there, you know, the rest of his existence, it's still like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
But he's got that whole time, he's got to accept that and feel that.
Yep. Yeah.
So, but I don't think it's as much of a punishment as it is rite of passage.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. It's
to the next vibrational level, closer to the Great One.
Yep. Very cool. All right, young man, I hear music in the background, and that usually means, it means a couple of things. It's not sirens, so that doesn't mean that. It's just music means I think I should let you go. Because I know you're going to be busy flogging your book.
Yeah.
So you got to get out there. We've been talking to Shawn Whittington. Please check him out, Vegas Supernatural, at kcor.com. That's KCOR. Radio.com. Check him out. Please look for his book. And God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, a Supernatural and Spiritual Autobiography by Reverend Shawn Patrick Whittington. And now you know why he's got Patrick in there. It's patron saint. And it came out on St. Patrick's Day. And check him out. Also, if you can go over to Vegas Supernatural, listen to the show that came out yesterday on his book launch, and hear about a little bit more about it. Shawn, thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Always a pleasure. You know that. And I can't wait to continue this conversation next Monday night on my show.
Oh, my Lord. Okay. You be well. Say hi to Sharon for me. And remember, guys, go to Ghost-B-Gone.biz, Las Vegas, Nevada. Read a little bit more about Shawn and his good work he's doing there. Good night, everybody.
God bless you, brother. Good night, everyone.
I'm condemned to the long, endless night, and I live in the absence of light, and my shadow has life of its own, watching you while you sleep all alone. I'm condemned to the long, endless night, and I live in the absence of light.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? Angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget your soul. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man that are now.